How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. Sorry that we are a day late from the normal schedule. We should be able to get back on to regular Thursday schedules moving forward. Just a couple of unexpected things have come up over the last couple of days that forced me to have to shift the scheduling. But glad to be back. Glad to be just actually here, being able to chat with y'all and hopefully be able to have kind of just a casual AMA stream today where we can, hopefully chat about the cameras, talk about, not really just talk about, answer a bunch of your questions, cover over various different features of the cameras. I unfortunately don't have a camera all set up for connection to walk through menus today, but if there are questions about menus, all that kind of stuff, we've got the capabilities. I've got the cameras here. I'll just do the old school way of holding the camera up in front of me and showing you on the main camera. But if you've not joined us before on these streams, these are weekly broadcasts that we do here on YouTube. To offer you the ability to chat with us directly and get answers to questions that you may have, check out new technologies, talk about photography, videography, and yeah, just have a resource directly from the brand so you don't have to necessarily dig through a bunch of information out online and maybe get the answer, maybe not get the answer. Yeah, that's kind of what we do around here. If you've been joining us for a while, welcome back. Before we dive into just kind of the open AMA, a couple things here. If you have a question, make sure to tag at LUMIX USA, as you can see Kudo has done down in the chat already. Just helps me see the questions on the back end here. If pretty much any questions is going to be open on these streams, so feel free to ask them. If I can't answer it, obviously I'll let you know I can't answer it. Certain things, future product, future firmware, stuff like that, I can't answer here. Those are things that you would always hear on official communication from the brand. So before we jump into the questions, just want to remind everybody in the US about LUMIX Pro services. We have the Red and the Platinum tier available. Red is the tier of the program that is free if you've purchased the LUMIX camera, so make sure to follow the QR code or the link down in the description. Get your cameras registered now that the GH7s are shipping, S9s are shipping, all that kind of fun stuff is. If it's not on the list yet, just give it a short little while as the system gets updated in the back end. Obviously, if you're following the news at all today, there's issues with Microsoft and all that stuff, so just kind of be a little patient if for some reason you go in today and it's not there, that kind of thing, while all of that stuff kind of gets resolved. If you're someone who likes a higher level of service and support, we have the Platinum tier membership. That is a paid level service that gets you 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. That's going to get you access to our membership hotline, which is a Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Program where you can speak to a person on the phone if you need troubleshooting support. You also get access to annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, EVF cleanings, firmware updates, all the kind of maintenance stuff that if you'd prefer us to handle it instead of you having to handle it, maybe between seasons, that kind of thing, you're covered with that as well. And then probably most importantly, you get 20% off out of warranty repairs. So if you happen to drop, break, or damage something that would not be considered warranty repair, you get a discount on that repair as well. So take a look in the description below or the QR code that's up on the screen right now, and you can get yourself registered. Again, I highly encourage it. If you've just bought a camera, get yourself LUMIX Pro Service Red at least. Get you into the program in case anything ever does happen with your equipment. So, as we said, if you have questions, make sure to tag at LUMIX USA, and we'll be able to go through them. And for those, because it's a bunch of people just jump in, I don't have a camera hooked up directly to the switcher today. Things are just a little too hectic in the studio right now. But I've got the camera hooked up, or I got the camera on me so we can walk through menus and stuff. Let's see here. some of the questions that came in from Chris. Actually, let me do Kudo first, and then Chris, I'll go on to your question. Says Kudo. Hey Sean, on the GH6 you lose access to the tab where you can process RAW files and trim clips when connected via HDMI. Is this normal? Yeah, for a while now, actually for about as long as I can remember, when you are outputting over HDMI for playback, it switches the operating system, or not system, it switches the operating output of the camera to a playback mode. That's why there is HDMI output and then there's HDMI connection in the menus. So there are some differences when you have an HDMI attached. I'm not exactly sure what the exact reason of it is, but I know that that's how it's been for quite some time, and I believe it probably has either something to do with the fact that you're outputting to a separate display. Certain different options aren't available over HDMI. So if that is something that you need, like for trimming clips in camera or the in-camera RAW processing, you would need to do it with the HDMI detached. Even if the external monitor is off, that signal is still being sent out because the cameras there's the handshake and information that has to go between the two devices. So that when you power the camera on or you power the monitor on, it already knows what signal it should be receiving, so it can update, stuff like that. So yeah, unfortunately that is a normal thing for the HDMI out on the cameras. Chris says, can the luminance spot meter be locked to the focus square? Would like for it to follow when setting up interview shots to measure skin tones while focusing. It's an interesting concept. It's one that we would definitely have to check with the engineering team. We do have the ability to link the spot meter to the focus points. You do have some of that ability, but as of right now, yeah, the luminance spot meter is an independent control. And part of that, I think, is just from the inception of what it was designed for, being able to spot check various different parts of the frame. But it's a good idea, Chris, and it is one that we can definitely pass up to our engineering team. We can let them know that this is something that's been asked about. Whether it's going to be something that I think we'll see anytime soon, I probably doubt it. Because a lot of times certain things like that have to go through a number of rounds of evaluation. One, to see if it's even feasible, and two, to see if it's something that has a high enough priority in the various different, things that we may have on a docket of things we want to firmware update, things we want to improve, things we want to implement, that kind of thing. But that's one of the reasons why we do these streams. I know you've been around on these streams for a while, and the more we hear commentary like that, the more information we can feed the engineering team, the product planning teams, the more kind of actual user feedback they get, that helps them determine, okay, this is a really important feature to a very large number of people, or this is more of a really cool feature to do, but it's not maybe the biggest priority of things that people want to see in the camera. So we take all that into consideration, and yeah, it just helps them revise and come up with better ways of doing things as we move forward. So thanks for the suggestion, Chris. Next one says, why high res full width 5.7K 5760 by 3240 and 16 by 9, 48 and 50p are not available, only 17 by 9. Well, it's clear that 60p at those resolutions is too high for compressing. 48 and 50p should be okay. So this is one of the things that it's interesting when you start looking at the various different aspect ratios. So for one, 17 by 9 in these cameras is actually a slightly shorter aspect ratio. And a lot of times, well, in one basket, you have the bounds of what processing power you have. Can you do the entire sensor width and that 3240 height in the bit rates that you need to make it work? Does the processing power have it? The other that you run into with that can also be, does this affect rolling shutter differently? What's the mode of operation for the sensor itself? Can it even do those modes? In the GH7, what's kind of important to remember about this is that this camera actually can do, technically it can do 5.7K at 120 frames per second, because the 4K 120 is pulled from that full sensor width. However, when you actually want to say, create the end result video as that, say, 5.7K 120 or something along those lines, you then start to look at, okay, what are the data requirements? What's the thermal load that it puts onto the entire system? Because going from 30 even to 48, 50, 60, and then up into things like 120, they exponentially add more processing. So in a lot of times in a case like this, the higher resolutions combined with the faster frame rates, it sounds like it should be able to do it, but you run into some other areas where the operation falls out of spec of what we are confident to really, or comfortable to release in a product that would be reliable. Reliability has been one of our biggest, kind of pillars as a product for quite some time. So we're not going to put something in a camera that is, in our testing, unreliable. We talk about thermal management, we talk about the bitrate reliability, stuff like that. And thermal management's one of the big things, right? When we test our cameras, they're all tested up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So if a camera can't operate unlimited at that, temperature rating, well, it's either going to be time limited or it's not going to do it. We've always had a very conservative and very, I'd say, I don't want to say strict, but I'd say we'd have a very kind of like solid line of, these are the requirements we have in development and design. And if they fall outside of that, typically that's what happens. In this particular case, I believe it's more of a processing thing than the output or thermals. So you run into, okay, what would the bitrate have to be with the frame rate that's involved? Does that load too much thermal into it? Does the processing have the overhead to handle that? Good example is, if you want to be able to record over 60p using an external SSD, that's where you need something like the DCC-18, the battery delete that we released with the S9, because this can provide the higher voltage that's required to do it. Higher voltage, runs cooler, that kind of thing. Let's see here. Chris says, okay. Thank you, YouTube, for jumping. Chris says, on G9 Mark II, had AF settings set to -1, -3. It worked great for interviews. When tracking a moving subject, it seems slow. Any suggestions on settings for following subjects? So on the new system, so on the PDAF system that we run, if I'm going to be going from, say, this kind of filming, so talking heads, interview style, not a lot of movement, you kind of need the system to go to a spot, lock, make adjustments as somebody moves, but you don't want it constantly trying to be too twitchy, because PDAF, the double-edged sword of PDAF is that when it twitches very visibly because it can be fast. In a case like that, I am using the sets that are in the camera. So if I'm doing any of the tracking for motorcycles or stuff like that, that's where I'm using like set 3 or set 4, the defaults that are in the camera, because I've found an incredibly high hit rate for what I shoot. Motorcycles coming towards me, crossing frame, and then going away. Even when it comes to pets, things like that, that's usually where I've got my camera set. Set 3 is kind of my default. Actually, honestly, set 3 is my default for like 90% of the stuff that I do with these cameras. So in a case like that, Chris, what I recommend is, because you can customize set 1, set 2, and set 3, and even set 4 in the menu system if you're doing video or you're doing video, so it's a little different. I was referring to photo. Sorry, as I just realized you were talking about video. In the video side, you can try, in shifting for where, if it's going to be a moving subject, I always recommend start at 0, so keep everything neutral. See, do some test shots. See where the system isn't performing the way you want it to. And this is true for any camera. See where the system's not performing how you want it to, but know that you have the ability to make those changes. So say if you're looking at moving subjects and you notice that if the subject moves rapidly, it takes a second for it to recognize, hey, the subject moved, then it moves. Well, you can adjust that. That's the AF switching sensitivity. Or it's the AF... Sorry, I have to double check what the name of that one is. Because we have the two separate names for it. So if you're in the menu settings here, and I'll point this up at the screen so you can see. So what you'd be looking at here is on the bottom setup here, you've got AF sensitivity. So if I were to go into here and want to change this, this is where, like, hey, I want it to actually be able to say, like, that subject has moved and I want it to respond faster. So you'd be able to make that more responsive. If the subject is, they're moving really fast, and then you determine, like, hey, it picked up that they moved, but it lags behind. I want it to be faster at moving. That's where, for those that don't know in this menu, that's where you can shift this to go fast. So I know it's a bit of a rambling answer, Chris, and yes, I'm showing on an S9, but it's the same in the G9 Mark II. It's the same in all of our modern cameras. So for a case like that, like I said, I would try to set up a scenario that is mimicking what you're trying to shoot. Look at which part of the equation is not moving fast enough for you, and then you make some of those changes, see what it is. The thing to remember is, you've probably noticed this, is that with the PDAF deployment in the cameras, those adjustments make a bigger change than they did on the DFD system. So every one tick that you move it, it becomes a more aggressive change than what they've done in the past. So take it slow, check your different settings, and really look and see which part of the focusing you want to have changed. That's about the best I got for you, Chris. When it's in photography, it's a lot easier, because in the photography side, I can usually just use my set 1 through 4, swap through them quickly, and know where I want them to go. So McCary says, nice to see you back. It's good to be back. Since LUMIX Lab doesn't connect to the G9 Mark II, is there any good way to export LUTs from Lab to the G9 Mark II? Yes, there is, actually. So in the LUMIX Lab app, and I apologize that I don't have it set up where I can show you the app yet, has been a weird week. With the LUMIX Lab app, you have the ability, when you create the look that you want, or you've downloaded the look that you want, when you go to the LUTs themselves, so you're looking at the menu that says, these are the LUTs that I have, you can tap on the kind of 3-bar icon, and you can share the LUTs. So what you can do there, for the time being, because remember, G9 Mark II, S5 Mark II, and S5 Mark IIX are slated to be getting support for LUMIX Lab, just don't have a timeline on it. You can export those LUTs. They'll be exported out as .cube files. You can send them to, like, a Google Drive account. You can send them to an iCloud account, whatever device you're using. You can send them there. Get them on your phone, and at that point you just take it and you can load them like you did, or like you're able to do currently on the camera. So For those that don't know, if you've not used our LUT system before, on your cameras, you'll have the ability to go to the LUT library. So I can go into LUT library, and then on this option here, I can scroll down. And when you go to an open spot on here, obviously I'm using an S9, so I have the most up-to-date number. I've got 7 pages worth. But from here, you would just click on an open one and then tap load. And because I don't have any on this card, it's not going to show it. But at that point, you'd be able to just click it, load it in, and then you can run it like normal. So that's what I would recommend for the time being. When LUMIX Lab and the cameras are potentially updated, again, I don't know exactly when this is going to be, you'll have the ability to do it like you can on the S9 and the GH7. But yeah, that's how I'd recommend doing it for now. And then on the reverse side, for those that are using LUMIX Lab, if you've got a GH7 or you've got an S9, if you're someone who wants to work with the RAW files, you do have the ability to transfer the RAW files from the camera right now to your mobile device or tablet or whatever it is that you're using. However, LUMIX Lab itself doesn't read the RAW files at this time. What you'll end up being able to do is that's where you can just have it. There's an option in the menu that says Save to Gallery. When you save those RAW files to Gallery, or you just transfer the files over, you can then still access them through things like Lightroom Mobile or Capture One Mobile, whatever your editing software is. The only thing to keep in mind there is that you gotta wait for whenever those apps update. I think last I checked, I don't know if Lightroom Mobile has updated for the S9 yet, but that's how you'd be able to, for the time being, be able to do your RAW edits on the go if you needed to. But yeah, so hopefully that helps, Makari. G says, when is Panasonic going to add security features to the cameras? Currently, it's really easy to resell stolen hardware, and it would be helpful to lock camera lenses. I'd be curious as to what you would be looking at as far as security features to the cameras. I think this is it's an interesting conversation to have. I in no way have the ability to speak for what, as a company, we would want to implement as far as security, or even what could be implemented for it. So genuinely, I think it'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are with it. Number of companies are making various different accessories. Like I know I think it's Small Rig, or one of them makes an accessory that lets you, put air tags into the grip for your cameras, which is an interesting concept. But also, I'd be interested to see what the statistics are on camera theft globally. Not to diminish the concept, theft is theft, and it's terrible. So it would be interesting, because all these items are serialized. So one of the biggest things that we always recommend in the time being is, things like if you register for a LUMIX Pro service, if you get yourself in the RED program, you're tying those serial numbers to you. So if for some reason, hey, you get stuff stolen, but your equipment was registered in with LUMIX Pro service, there's a record that equipment is yours. You have receipts, things like that. Sometimes your credit card companies, if you purchase based on various different companies, they'll have theft protection, various different things. Insurance is always kind of a good thing to have. I think as far as camera manufacturers go, it's an interesting and challenging area to take a look at. But I know that it's something that has always been looked at in my, I think almost like 15 years of working in the photo video industry. I know that's always been a question, is like what could be done as far as hardware goes. Because you got to remember, your cameras aren't connected to any kind of network. So things like Find My Phone or stuff like that don't exist in the camera world because they're not 5G enabled, stuff like that. So It's an interesting concept. But yeah, if you have suggestions or things that you would like to see, drop them in the chat. All things. What's the standard warranty on Lumix cameras? Standard warranty on Lumix cameras is going to be, in the United States, it's a 1-year manufacturer's warranty. However, if you register on Lumix Pro Services, you get an additional 3 years with it. And that's just by registering the camera for the Red Tier program for free. I'm not 100% sure what the warranty time lengths are in various different countries, because it does change country to country. Certain countries have various different laws for what that kind of stuff is. But if you take a look at, usually the user's manuals will tell you. You just have to look at the one that's designed for your region, and they should be able to tell you. Otherwise, the local rep for Panasonic in your region should be able to get you that kind of information. Your local dealers, stuff like that. All things. It's a good idea to add Lumix USA. Talk about hot pixels and sensors. Okay. Yeah, hot and stuck pixels and sensors are just a thing. Vast majority of cameras, I don't care who makes it, where it comes from, sensors have a, I'd say a margin that is acceptable for potential hot and stuck pixels. If you turn all things like noise reduction, all that kind of stuff off, especially if you do long exposure noise reduction, if you turn those things off, you are going to see potentially more hot and stuck pixels, because modern cameras do typically black frame removal. So if you, like on our cameras, when you do a 10-minute long exposure, actually I can probably do it like a 2-minute exposure, I think is roughly where it starts. You'll do a 2-minute exposure of the actual image, then you do a 2-minute exposure of just a black frame. And then what that does is the black frame will have the hot and stuck pixels, references that onto the main image, removes those hot and stuck pixels through various different methods, and you're good to go, and you don't have them anymore. Most raw software pretty much is good at getting rid of them these days. They can kind of identify what is a hot and stuck pixel, and it can typically get rid of it. But yeah, it is something that as technology moves further and further, as resolutions get higher, as the underlying hardware technology changes and moves forward, there are variances that you'll see. You would be hard pressed to be able to find any camera, and it's even on cell phones, it's on all that kind of stuff. You'd be hard pressed to find a device that has 0 hot or stuck pixels. A lot of times within mirrorless cameras, you'll also see the ability for sensor cleaning, or pixel refresh, stuff like that. Those are similar things that exist in the cameras, to where, hey, if you start noticing stuck pixels or whatever, you'll be able to run that, and then it can identify them and try to unstick them. So it happens. It happens in pretty much every single camera that's out there. I don't care who makes it. It is something that just does exist. But usually it's at such a minute scale that you never really see any impact of it, because the image processing is able to correct for any of that stuff. Paul says, thinking about GH7 just for photography, as I prefer screen configuration. Have you tested how much quicker the buffer would clear CF card over SDs, or are there other limiting factors? I have not had the opportunity to go through buffer clearing tests. It's been a little bit of a hectic time coming back from the various different trade shows and everything since we've announced the GH7, and it's been ridiculously hot down here in Austin, so I unfortunately haven't been able to get a lot of time outside to be able to do those tests, but I'm hoping over the next week that I can get some time to get out there and go grab some pictures. and do some of that testing. I was hoping to do it this week, but as I said, things kind of changed my schedule this week. It's CF Express cards. Thing to remember with typically with media is that a lot of times media, you're always going to see a much bigger gain on the post side with media. Now on the GH7, the benefit there obviously is higher bit rates, things like that in the video side. As far as stills go, yeah, you get, faster theoretical speed, but you do typically, in any camera, you are still going to be bound by what the internal buffer speeds are. So what speed of the memory that's used, stuff like that, to be able to clear it out to the cards. Let's see here. Chris, any suggestions on how to convert HDMI to SDI? Love SDI on my the S1H and EVA. Wondering if I can use SDI with the S1H to have more secure connection. I mean, yeah, you can. There are a number, I think, like Blackmagic, Decimator. There's a bunch of them out there that can take the HDMI in and then they can kick out an SDI. You still have the HDMI on the camera, but that device would then be the external device, it's usually a powered device, would do your conversion for you. So they do exist. Look up things like Decimator, Chris, and you can take a look at some of those. I even think Blackmagic makes some as well. But you got to be careful for what the output resolution and frame rate is. A lot of them you'll find are like 1080p. So even if you're sending it, like you try to send it a 4K signal, it may just not work. But yeah, so some of those things do exist out there. Let's see here. Doug says, taking bird in flight over the ocean surf this morning with G9 Mark II and 100-400, both on current firmware. Animal subject detection while tracking with loose focus, hunting near far. Thoughts on how to avoid? I think I might need a little more information, Doug. What focus mode were you in? What focus mode, I mean, were you in full area, one area plus, that kind of thing? What AF mode were you in? Or AF custom setting were you in? Were you in just AF custom set 1? Were you changing between 2, 3, and 4? Because each of them are going to have the system react differently. By default, our cameras ship in mode 1, which is a generic autofocus performance mode. It's good for casual photography, being able to, some street photography, things that aren't moving too quickly. So a lot of times, especially for something like that, going into the menu, changing it to maybe like set 3 or set 2, where it shifts what the subject motion prediction, the lock on, the speed can help in situations like that. A lot of times it just comes down to getting it off the default AF custom settings for you. Let's see, this is OT. Can you please explain how to use camera profiles in Capture One? By default, it is possible to use either Pro Standard or generic profiles made by Phase 1. So Capture One does not have our camera profiles. Like standard, vivid, natural, things like that. If you wanted an editor that had or has that support, so if you shoot in the camera you want standard, you'd have to use the Adobe products. Adobe Camera Raw has all of our actual camera color profiles. Capture One doesn't. So if you wanted to do that, you'd have to appeal to Capture One to add them in. So, Halifax says, if I run into an issue with a product, what is an email I can submit info on the issue? I'm not looking for support and resolution, just want to help improve your products. Yeah, I mean, if you run into some kinds of issues, one of the biggest things is you can always do Lumix Live at us.panasonic.com. It'll be up at the end of the stream. The end card will have the email address on it. It's not an actively responding email account, so if you submit something, you may not get an email back, but it is a email address that gets seen by a number of us. So if you just tag it in there, potential issue or something like that, it just helps us see it. You can always also drop things down in the chat or the comment section after this video is posted, because I do read through the comments. Either of those can work. Halifax. Tree Young, will 10-bit 422 or higher HEIF be added someday in the future? I love shooting stills with Vlog profile together with real-time LUT, but JPEG is not enough for Vlog. So, HEIF, moving to that kind of still or JPEG side of the image, I don't know if it's something that can be added. I don't know if it would be added. What I do know is that, for one, yes, Vlog shooting stills in real-time LUT, it's designed so that the 8-bit JPEG that you're going to get should be perfectly fine, but with the understanding that it's not really meant to be tweaked afterwards, because it is an 8-bit. JPEGs are 8-bit containers. But it would be interesting if things like HEIF or stuff like that could be added in the future. HEIF files, they're not going to be 10-bit 422. They'll be 10-bit 420. Like anyone that's dropping in HEIF files, or HEV, or whatever the other acronym is for it. But it's something I know that we've had brought up a couple of times before. I know Matt and I have talked to the engineering team about, hey, it'd be cool if we could implement these kinds of things. But yeah, at this point, I don't know if that's something that would be added anytime soon. Hood says, is there any specific type of USB-C cord or anything else needed to attach the Panasonic DMW DCC18 DC coupler? So the DC coupler, this is the new one that has that USB-C end on it. If you wanted to use this, you want to make sure that the cable, the USB-C cable that you are using with this, is capable of USB power delivery. So what does that mean? That means that a lot of us have tons of things like this lying around. These are USB cables that are typically provided with our phones, with tablets, stuff like that. What you would notice is that typically in the actual manuals, they tell you that these are just USB 2.0 cables, typically just for charging. But they also usually aren't rated all that high for what they can actually charge, voltage-wise. On the DCC18, you want to make sure that, one, the power brick that you're going to use to supply power to this is 9-volt 3-amp. That's what the camera needs. So if I were to use, sorry for the noise, if I were to use something like this, like an external power brick, this has a 140 watt out, and this has a standard USB-C power delivery out, which I forget exactly what the output is on that one. USB-C 2 is 5-volt 3-amp, 9-volt 3-amp, 12-volt 3-amp, 15 at 3-amp, and 20 at 3.2. So this has that 9-volt 3-amp rail, basically, that it can output. So as long as you have these two, you have to make sure that the cable that goes between it is rated for higher speed, higher power capacity or charging capacity. Typically, you're going to see those as cables that are marketed for things like laptops, stuff like that. Those will be the ones that can make sure that you've got the output that you need for it. Don't go to like a 7-Eleven and get a cable from there. Like the that kind of stuff. Usually those cables are very inexpensive for a reason, and they usually don't charge at faster throughputs. Ulrich says 2 feature requests: pre-buffer of 2 seconds or 4 seconds for video, especially slow motion, waiting for a bird and such. That's a really good. It's a good recommendation. I will mention that to our team. Where did the chat go? Second feature, multi-shot like handheld high res, but in the normal resolution, just more dynamic range for a mostly static subject. Interesting idea. Yeah, I would recommend that to the team as well. Same with William's recommendation, 1.6D squeeze. We've asked about this for a while. I know Matt and I have asked about it for a while as well. So we will add that to the commentary. JC says, will the GH7 get Cine naming option for files when Lumix cameras are connected via USB-C for webcam? Is video compressed? What bitrate and codec is used? It's not compressed like clean HDMI. JC, so the GH7 does have Cine file naming, just like the GH6 does. So that is in the menu. You just have to toggle it. By default, it's in DCIM, but yeah, you have that ability. And USB-C for webcam, our cameras still do require the webcam drivers to be installed, and it's like I think it's like a 720p output. It's fairly compressed. I don't know exactly what bitrate and codec are used. On the GH7 though, you do also have the ability to do RTSP, which is the 4K streaming protocol over Ethernet. So you do have that ability. That gives you either H.264 or H.265 compression. I think you can go up to 25 or 50 megabit per second. I forget the exact number. I'm using my GH7 right now as the main camera, so I can't check it right away. And in that case, if you're using RTSP, it will be able to send it out. You'll have audio mixed with it. Just have to remember that RTSP is going to have more delay than HDMI. So if you're doing, 2-camera interaction like this, not the most ideal, but if you're deploying remote cameras, so you're sending it out to someone to, say, record stuff, and you want to be having that, linking into it to record locally somewhere else, that's where it can work really, really well. So, Michael says, is 24 FPS true 24 on the S5 IIX, or is it 2997? So it's not 2997 because that's 30p. 24 frame in the Lumix cameras, you have 2 options for it. By default, the cameras ship in either NTSC or PAL, depending on the region that you purchase the camera in. But you do have a region or a frequency selector that allows you to change it to true 24.00 hertz, which is, for those that don't know, that's what's being called true 24. When you put the camera into 24 hertz operating mode, you only have 24 frames per second, so 24.00. And yeah, you have that ability on the S5 IIX. You just have to tell the camera in the settings menu, change system frequency. I believe you even have that on the S9 as well. Let me just double check. Yes. So this is the menu option you're going to look for. It's called system frequency. It's in the settings. You would change it to cinema, and that's going to get you true 24 frames per second. Lumix tape, I like that. In M mode, even when constant preview is on, the lightness of exposure can still change vastly when focusing. There must be. So yeah, we've had a number of conversations about this, about our constant preview. It's something that we've asked the engineering team about. The way it currently works is the way our system is designed. but we can keep asking. Let's see here. Let's see here. Solid. Can we please get an option to edit the save network profiles, keep Wi-Fi connection, but change network share to save? Not sure I completely understand the question. Yeah, not sure I completely understand the question, Salat. Saved... edit the saved network profiles. So, like, if you need to change the password that was used or something like that. Interesting idea. Yeah, we'll have to definitely ask about that. JC, when can we expect GH7 to be compatible with LUMIX Tether? I actually think it already is. Let's double check. LUMIX Tether. Looking that one up right now, JC. Okay, yeah, it's not formally added to it yet. I would imagine pretty soon, because, let's see, we announced the S9, that was updated on June 3rd, that was added in compatibility. I'd imagine GH7 is going to be added shortly. I think I've tested it. I think it technically works now, it's just not 100% formally validated, so, yeah. McCary says, thanks, totally missed the share function and slipped my mind, could send the phone, thanks, and she'll work. Cool. Good to hear, McCary. Epic Adrian 3D, on Arilog C3 on the GH6 with dynamic range boost, what is the based ISO? Honestly, I don't know. I don't have the firmware or a code for my GH6, so I haven't been able to actually go through and take a look at it. So I'd have to check for you. Hood says, probably like a password lock for some security. Interesting idea. I know cameras years ago, like if you were in specialty stuff, like if you were doing volume photography, you could lock the cameras. Be an interesting idea. We'll definitely pass it up. Salat, the apps for phone, PC, Mac need an overhaul. Tether won't work with cameras connected via Wi-Fi to the local network. Sometimes you get target limit error on network share. Okay. USB webcam support UVC is standard on other vendors too. Yep, I know that. I'm gonna say Bogdan because I can't pronounce your first name. Says, are 6-bit coded lenses recognized by the S5IIX with the right adapter? It's a good question. No idea. I don't have any 6-bit M lenses that I'd be able to check with, and I don't know if there are adapters that are 6-bit to L mount. I mean, well, I take that back because I think Leica's is done with that, but I don't have 6-bit lenses or that adapter to be able to test. It's a bit of a fringe case, so I'm honestly not sure. But we could check. Theoretically, I think it should, because the 6-bit is supposed to communicate some of the information, at least tell it what it is. But it's pretty limited. So, yeah, I can check with some of my contacts over at Leica to see. If it does it on the SL cameras, it might do it on ours. Because that would be something that's part of the L-mount communication, I would think, for that adapter, because the adapter would be first party. So, hope you're good. Just joined. When can we expect new LUMIX app support for the S5 II and the 2X? I don't have any updated information on that yet. Hi, Sean. For birds in flight, I would like to see that once the subject is grabbed in a small focus area, it will keep it in focus also when it leaves the focus area. That would help. Yeah, we can, we'd have to ask engineering team about the feasibility of something like that. Is it possible to bring slow and quick mode to the GH7? Probably not, because that system is designed for variable frame rate. So it will function differently than G9 Mark II. It's just how the systems operate. Was using set 3, so I'll try other settings using AFC in zone, 1 area plus, and full area. And that's from Doug. Yes, I would try playing around with a couple of the different ones, Doug. Like I said, set 3 is what I typically... A lot of times that's what my cameras are set to, and it usually works perfectly fine for what I do. But obviously, in these modern styles and the capabilities of these cameras, things that work for me may not work for you. But that is also why each of those options in those sets can be customized, because if you're finding, like I was saying earlier for like Chris's commentary or question, if you find that like, hey, it's not moving fast enough, you have the ability to speed that up. And when you make those changes, it'll stay in that set for you. So they are customizable to your particular needs. Halifax. Thanks, Sean. Hope you're doing well. Recently bought a Fuji. Never realized how spoiled Lumix made me. It's okay. It doesn't hold a candle to the GH build quality and ergonomics. Hey, man, cameras are cameras. It's kind of one of the side things that I was going to talk about if it was lighter on questions today, just about how important it is that, you know, we talk about a lot of specs and features and pro use cases and all this stuff with the cameras, and that kind of stuff is fun. It's great, but ultimately I think remembering that, for a lot of us as we grew up, families always had cameras with us. We always had things documenting our lives, our family members, our experiences and stuff like that. Being able to take your cameras and actually, yes, use them for paid work, all that kind of fun stuff. And that's great because it's a job. But remembering that, actually use your cameras to capture life, capture family members. It's an important thing that cameras still have that capability. Yeah, we've all got our phones and we do that kind of stuff, but one of the things I can say from personal experience is you realize often too late how, while these things seem convenient and great because it's in your pocket and you can grab pictures, after things happen, you realize how crappy the image quality is out of a phone when you're looking to find an actually really good, high quality picture. So use these for fun too. It's one thing to be always talking about pro and work and the high quality, professional side of this industry, but I mean, stuff, no matter what it is, you have a camera with you, always carry them with you. Capture those things, your family, your pets, your all of that, because it's the one area where phones still, I don't care what anyone says, still can't hold a candle to. The image quality you get out of a good camera, those memories are going to be way more important. Back to tech. Sorry, y'all. Is it possible to force LUMIX S5 to 2x to use full area video recording with Sigma's APS-C lenses? No, it is not. Sigma lenses are designed, the APS-C ones are designed as APS-C. They communicate, they share that info. It's how the manufacturer designed them. The areas outside of the APS-C or the Super 35 region are not designed for image capture. It's just not going to happen. I got time for a couple more questions, y'all. Sorry for the lower energy on this stream today. GH7 focus mode question. For weddings, full area, 1 area with human detection, suggestions. While Ninja V connected to HDMI, is there an autofocus speed, delay, performance? On the modern cameras, no. For external HDMI device, there's no penalty for speed or performance. For weddings, depends. I usually recommend doing 1 area or a small zone with subject detection, personally, because full area is great, when you don't have an entire room filled with a ton of subjects and you have no way to tell the camera, hey, I want that person to be the main subject. The one area, the way I have always used it, is one area allows me to put the box in the trigger box, lets me put that in the framing of the scene where I want the subject to be anyway. So I can have that box in that spot. So say like on this display, I have it like right here, right where my hand is. So I can have that there, and subject detection will click on when something touches that box. So now I know, like, if the person's even on this box, it's going to trigger body detection. If their face is in it, it's going to trigger face and eye if they're close enough. So that allows me to frame, but then also pick out the subject that I want, because it'll ignore the other subjects. If the person doesn't get picked up by subject detection for whatever reason, it also falls back and it says that, hey, I get that there's no subject here, but this is the area I want you to be focusing in. It, to me, in the various different experiences that I've used our cameras in, it helps me tremendously in getting my keeper rate, because in full area, if your subject detection is not finding a subject for whatever reason, lighting conditions, the type of subject, maybe for some reason you clicked it into animal instead of human, whatever it is, because there's always a potential for human error with cameras. They're only as smart as they are the inputs you give them. In a case like that, it defaults to full area, and full area you have no control to tell it what you want to focus on. You can override it, but that's not always doable in the heat of the moment when you're photographing a wedding or creating video for a wedding. So that's what I recommend. One area, subject detection, put the box where you want the framing to typically be, and just keep that box on the subject, whether that's moving the camera, because you're going to want to move the camera to keep framing anyway. D Creative, are you answering questions related to the original S5? Of course. I'll answer questions related to any of our cameras. For today, though, we've only got a couple more minutes for the stream that I can do today. But yeah, even next week we'll be able to do those. Feature request, focus stacking in playback mode. Yeah, we can pass that on. Why is it not possible to use tether capture in software like Lightroom Capture One? The S-Line cameras are amazing for studio photography. Got to talk to Capture One on that one. We have open SDKs that allow any manufacturer to be able to add our camera control. We've had them since the box cameras. Whoa. Where did the chat just jump to? There it is, William. Is the long-term plan for LUMIX Lab to absorb the features of LUMIX Tether? Not necessarily, no. LUMIX Tether is our desktop tool. LUMIX Lab will be the mobile platform. Now for LUMIX Sync, I think we've already talked about how we are planning to have some of the features that are on LUMIX Sync get carried over to LUMIX Lab, but they're going to be through stages. So, okay. All in all, it's from Macari. All in all, the G9 Mark II is a marvel in engineering. So many features, being able to go from recording concerts to portrait work with primes, then to wildlife with 100 to 400 in slow-mo, macro, bravo. Yeah, I think the engineering team did a lot of really cool stuff with these modern cameras. John Paul, hey Sean, did you watch Long Legs yet? If not, I definitely recommend it. It's nice. I'll take a look. I haven't. And last one that I've got for today, William, Really appreciate you, Sean. Say hello to Matt. Thank you for another fantastic live Q&A stream. Thank you all for jumping in here. Apologies for the lower energy than normal and the delay from yesterday's normal streaming time. I'm hoping that next week will be perfectly fine, back up to normal Thursdays at 2 p.m. Thank you all so much for the questions, the comments, the recommendations, all that kind of stuff. We will be back next Thursday. At least plan, everything should be fine on schedule moving forward. If you have comments, questions, things that didn't get answered during the stream, leave them down in the chat, or not in the chat, in the comments after this video, after the stream ends. Helps me just kind of see them, go through them, come up with questions or answers for next week's stream. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Hope you have an awesome weekend. And like I said, get out there with your cameras. Yes, we use them for professional work. Yes, we use them for making money a lot of times, especially a lot of you in the chat. But don't underestimate the importance of using our cameras and our equipment to capture family and friends and memories that you actually want to be able to keep in high quality. Because from personal experience, while these things, like I said, these are great because you have them with you, but when push comes to shove, the image quality is pretty damn terrible compared to an actually really good photo. So take that, get out there, create some cool stuff this weekend. Let us know. Let us see your stuff. Follow us. If you like the streams, give us a like. If you don't subscribe already, subscribe if you think we've offered a good value to you. And other than that, hope you all have a great rest of your day and weekend, and talk to you all later.